I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to a playoff edition of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. We are proud to be a part of the Pigskin Podcast Network. You can find them at PigskinPodNet on Twitter, or you can search the hashtag TPN, which we all hashtag as we go live. We've got football, baseball, basketball, soccer, wrestling, everything. I'm sure we'll have some Winter Olympic stuff on there as well. Make sure to check them out for all of your sporting needs. Crazy Week 18, the longest fantasy football season we've ever had on record, technically, and it lived up to the hype. Let's be honest. I was a little bit worried about how some of these games went. Talked about it. Did I pick the Jags to win? I can't remember. I don't think I did, but I said it was possible. The Jags major upset. Teams crazy Sunday night game. It was a fun last week of football. Gentlemen, before we jump in and start talking about those playoff matchups, getting set, our playoff challenge, coaches being fired, it's a full Monday episode. How are you guys doing?
You're muted.
Ding dang, Sheriff. I'm doing pretty good. It's cold as heck up here. Sold the boy's car, so now we can go get him a car that runs. So one that's not a fixer-upper. It's been a great day overall.
Maybe you can talk him into a moped.
Yeah.
Just live.
You ever ridden a moped in January in Ohio?
No, but I can't imagine it's pleasant.
No.
It's after a coolish weekend, we're sailing into some beautiful weather here. I don't know if it was just the Broncos making a change that parted the clouds and removed the chill in the air, but it's for Colorado, it is supposed to be 62 degrees on Thursday with light wind, which feels like a miracle.
Yeah, Denver. It was a good game, though, right? So let's just go right to them. Vic Fangio.
Melvin fucking Gordon.
Yeah, it was a great game for everybody but Melvin Gordon. Maybe I should have put it that way. Vic Fangio, Pat Shurmur, and Tom McMahon are all fired in Denver. Matt, we're coming to you. You are our resident Broncos fan here. What do you think this means for them? Is there a coach you'd like them to go get? I'm almost positive the thing I saw in there was they're going after Dan Quinn, so they're sticking on the defensive side of the ball.
I know, and it was almost like right away they played clips this morning on the news. And, George Patton talking about Vic Fangio saying he's the greatest coach he's ever worked with, and immediately cut to the local sports announcer saying, when you fire somebody and say they're the best of anything that you've ever worked with, we know you're just talking out of some place where the sun can't get to. That was literally how I woke up this morning. I'm always hopeful that they're going to look something creative. I will be the first to say, what Dan Quinn has done with the Dallas Cowboys defense this season is nothing short of incredible. They had no defense last year. Now they have one of the best. He's always been a great defensive coordinator. I did not think he was an incredible head coach in Atlanta. And honestly, Denver has not fundamentally had an offense for 6 years. There's a lot of fun and interesting and creative potential coaches that are floating around out there. And somebody on one of the fan pages said they think they're going to try to interview Mike Zimmer. I'm like, guys, the excitement of potentially doing something new, rolling into like if we hire Mike Zimmer. The only one of the defensive coaches that they've referenced wanting to interview that I thought might be interesting is Brian Flores, just because we'll get to that in a minute. But I actually thought what he had done with Miami was fairly impressive. But I'm hoping Denver thinks out of the box. I know that goes against every fiber of the being of the front office, but it would be nice to get something fresh, something different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Quinn's only been off the head coaching market for what, a year and a half?
Yeah, he got fired after week 5 of 2020 season.
Man, I feel like he needs to just stick in Dallas for a little bit, spend a couple more years. I don't know. Maybe it was he didn't build a good enough staff. Maybe it was the front office issue in Atlanta that they weren't bringing in enough of the right players. Didn't have a creative enough offensive coordinator. I don't know. I feel like he's a really, really good defensive coordinator, but he just because he was in Atlanta for what, 7 years or something. He got a couple contracts, didn't he?
Yeah, and they were very successful when Kyle Shanahan was his offensive coordinator, but after the Super Bowl, Shanahan went to San Francisco and that team wasn't the same. Honestly, that would be part of my fear. Fangio was incredible with Denver's defense, but he was when it came to game management, and they never developed any kind of offense. And that would be what gives me a little bit of pause when you're talking about going right back to that well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically you see franchises go the 180, right? Like they go the complete opposite way. If they had a defensive head coach, they tend to go offensive. They had a players coach, they tend to go for the hard ass. So I was very curious when I saw that Dan Quinn thing. I mean, I know he declined to interview with the Jags, I think a couple weeks ago after they let Urban Meyer go. I mean, that's the thing. I think he'd be a great fit, but the biggest question is what would he do for the offense? Because I think, no, I don't mean this as like any disrespect toward Fangio because he had that Pittsburgh defense rolling forever. But Atlanta's defense was really good for a long time, and I don't think they had nearly the pieces that Denver has right now. I also think the biggest problem with Denver is not necessarily the offense, is what are they going to do at quarterback? Because I think they've got the pieces. They have a good team. Like, I listened to Fangio's press conference the other day. I don't think he was necessarily wrong. Like, I do think Denver is right there. They're just missing one piece, and it's the quarterback. It's the biggest piece of that team. You cannot – we are seeing nowadays, it's not the days of old where Trent Dilfer can take the Baltimore Ravens to a Super Bowl and win it. You have to have a good quarterback. You cannot just have that game manager. Say what you want about Jimmy G. He's at least a little bit better than a game manager, and they just don't have that. Teddy Bridgewater's not it. Locke, for as exciting as he is and as fun as he is to watch sometimes, he just makes too many mistakes. And I wouldn't even put that game on him. I mean, it was, as you just mentioned right beforehand, Matt, it was on Melvin Gordon, in my opinion. So go ahead.
That's right. You do need creativity. So I guess if you were really pressing me, I would be interested in seeing a Kellen Moore, an Eric Bieniemy, or Byron Leftwich, somebody who has worked with quarterbacks and who has worked very well on an offense to see what they could do. Because I'm going to say, I was impressed with the 3 starts with Drew Lock. They were 0-3. That wasn't about him. They weren't blocking very well. Some of those games they weren't running very well. It was a very uncreative offense, and I think it was beaten into him. He wasn't allowed to take any chances. When you saw him actually make a couple of throws that he had to make down the sidelines, he was making them, and he cleaned up with that one terribly timed fumble, where he basically got the ball ripped out of his hands aside. He didn't turn the ball over in those. He didn't take a bunch of sacks. I think he did honestly conscientiously work on that. But did they have somebody who was actually going to push them to another level? No, they tried to make him into Teddy Bridgewater instead of taking his natural ability and cleaning up the turnovers.
Yeah, and so that's where if you do bring in a offensive-minded head coach, maybe they're able to do that. I don't know that they stick with Locke either. I mean, Denver's got – there's a few teams that are very interesting here with the moves that they've made. And the biggest shock, I think, was the next one. It was Brian Flores being fired in Miami. I don't get this one at all. I mean, I get there were a lot of people who thought Miami would make the playoffs. I know I picked them to make the playoffs. They almost made it in. I understand that almost doesn't count for anything. They don't get an almost trophy. They're sitting at home this week and they're not playing in the playoffs. But when Brian Flores came in 2 years ago, this was a horrible roster. This team was not good at all. And the immediate year that he was there, they competed. They played well. Last year, they played really well again. For all the yo-yoing of quarterbacks and all the injuries, this has been, in my opinion, a very good team. To take a team of what, they 1-7, right? Before they rolled off all the wins that they did. I don't understand this one bit. Now, I did see a lot of it maybe because apparently he
doesn't want Deshaun Watson.
Well, from what I saw, he's butting heads with the general manager, and I guess Stephen Ross preferred to keep him over Brian Flores because they said that the general, I don't know his name, Steve something, I think, is his job is safe. That makes no sense to me because I'm sorry, outside of what, Jalen Waddle, maybe? Like
he's never gotten a running back.
Yeah, and what is these other home run picks that this general manager has made the entire time he's been there? So I don't understand that one at all. That was kind of the most surprising. I mean, Dennis, what were your thoughts when you saw that Brian Flores was being let go?
I was surprised, but as news has come out, I'm less surprised. It was clearly a power struggle between him and Chris Grier, who's the GM. Now, Grier has been there for 20 years. He spent 15 years in the scouting department and worked his way up till he was the head of the scouting department. And then he became the general manager. He's been the GM for 5 years now, I think. So there's clearly a strong relationship between him and Stephen Ross. Now, Grier and Flores clearly had different directions they wanted to go with the quarterback. I think, Grier selected Tua. I think Grier wanted Tua. Flores wanted Deshaun Watson. That's what the reports I've been seeing have said. But a lot of what's come out has been all about relationships. Alfredo Brown posted, he said in 3 seasons, Brian Flores had 4 offensive coordinators, 4 offensive line coaches, 4 quarterback coaches, 2 defensive coordinators, and 2 assistant head coaches. So he seems to struggle with relationships at the management level, but the players have been coming out in droves, talking about how great he was for their career. So the players are clearly playing for him. So whether or not, his relationship issues with management peers are a problem that he needs to resolve, kind of looks that way. But he was in a tough situation with Chris Grier. We've seen it time and time again where the head coach and the GM eventually end up in a battle for power, and one of them has to go. In the end, I think it come down to Flores not being strong in the relationship department with management, and Grier is.
It's interesting to me that you said you saw some where they thought that Flores wanted Watson and Grier wanted to keep Tua, because I saw a couple of people that seemed to think it was the other way around.
Yeah, I'm not sure which way it was. I've seen both.
We'll see what happens.
One wanted one and one wanted the other. I just don't know. I'm not 100% sure which it was.
Well, we'll get some clarity on that depending on if they make a strong move for Watson again. It'll kind of answer itself. The thing somebody mentioned today is wondering whether Miami is going to look back at this in a few years the same way Detroit probably thinks about firing Jim Caldwell, where it seemed like the team was making progress. They had done better, and it was like, well, maybe this isn't the right fit. We think we can go and get something else. Miami finished with 9 wins above 500 2 years in a row, which is a pretty exceptional mark. Even that year that they were supposedly outright tanking was that really fun, like 6-10 finish with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was 24-25, I think they said, in 3 seasons. That's not a terrible mark, especially for the condition that team was in. I was pretty surprised, and I'll be curious to see where he lands. The other big thing, he was 4-2 against Bill Belichick in his 3 years, which is not something very many people that came off Belichick's tree can ever say.
I don't think anybody else can say that. I believe the next successful was Bill O'Brien, who I think has 2 wins against Bill. So, I mean, yeah, it made no sense to me. I think if you're any of the teams that let a coach go, he's probably your first call, because I don't see – to me, he's the best coaching candidate out there. I mean, I understand Dan Quinn, really good, but I think with what Brian Flores was able to do with that defense in Miami, I'd take him. I don't even know where Miami goes, and I honestly don't know what this means now for Tua, that offense. I mean, the only thing maybe I would take from this if I roster Tua and some of those guys is maybe they bring in somebody, because my biggest gripe with Brian Flores in Miami has been is he seems like he wants to run like this old school offense, and it's not at all what like fits Tua and Waddle's games. They never got that running back, as you mentioned, Matt. If you want to have that ground and pound and play defense, you have to have at least a decent running back. And I don't mean any offense to Myles Gaskin, but he wasn't doing it for him. So,
which isn't Brian Flores unless he had the
right.
autonomy of the roster. He's not the one that said, "Hey, let's go sign Malcolm Brown."
But we've seen other coaches adapt to what their roster is, and Brian Flores to me never really seemed to do that on the offensive side of the ball. He always brought in these kind of old school play callers. I can't remember who it was that first year, but it was a Gailey. Okay, I mean, it was not a guy who's trying to open up the pass offense and everything, and I think that's kind of always been the biggest thing there. And I get it, because again, he comes from the Bill Belichick tree, and Josh McDaniels opens it up here and there, but he just seemed like he was very set in his ways. That was always my biggest gripe. Very curious to see what happens in Miami, because they do have some decent pieces. This one we kind of expected, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace.
Before we go, I just saw breaking news. The Broncos have requested to interview someone off the McVay tree, offensive coordinator in LA, Kevin O'Connell.
Which we've seen that be a kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
but he, he got coffee from McVay. He's qualified.
Analytics King might have cost himself last night, so we can get to that in a minute. Matt, we knew Matt Nagy was going to get fired. Those rumors have been out. We were not sure Ryan Pace was going to be let go. He is out as well. What do you think this means for Justin Fields in Chicago?
Yeah, the coach and the GM that drafted you both get the sack. You didn't have the most affirming season of your talent. I don't know if it's all on him. He looked okay at times, but there are a lot of questions in Chicago. They're going to have to get a GM in place. Then they're probably going to have to try to get a coach. We already suspected Allen Robinson was about to walk. It's not like the cupboard is full in Chicago on either side of the ball now. They a few years ago had an exceptional defense, and they just needed the offense. We've seen pieces ebb away and age out of that group too. I'm not sure, I'm sure we'll have time to rank these, but I'm not sure I would rank Chicago as among the most attractive openings here either.
Well, and my concern with Chicago is that the guy that they brought in to help, the only football guy to lead their coaching search, is 80-some-odd-year-old Bill Polian, who's been removed from the game for a while. Now, I know he was in Indianapolis with Peyton, but it seems like he might be the guy that says, hey, you should hire Bill O'Brien, as opposed to looking for something.
The people in Chicago just tuned us out.
But I don't know. O'Brien might be okay for Fields' development, but it's going to be tough. I think whoever goes in there, their number one goal has got to be to develop an offense that suits Justin Fields' strengths.
Yeah, and that's going to be kind of the weird part, I guess, because I'd feel much more comfortable, Matt, like you just mentioned, had Ryan Pace still been there, because at least, he wanted him. He traded up to get him. So maybe they move more into like an offensive coach that can build around what Justin Fields does. Now you're bringing in a general manager that has got to just kind of, I guess, I shouldn't say settle, but you've got to find a general manager. Like, you can't interview a general manager. If I'm interviewing Matt Fox here to be the general manager of the Chicago Bears, and then he's like, well, I really don't think Justin Fields is the guy. That might be an issue because they've already traded up for him. He's the guy. I don't know how that's going to work out.
They gave up their first this year, right? I thought that they traded their first from this year to move up. So now you're talking about coach and a GM coming in with fewer assets too.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I'm trying to think about who are the candidates. Is Peterson gonna be a good candidate? Would he be a good candidate to work with Fields? I don't know. He might be, but because I don't know.
It didn't go that well in Philly, so.
Right? But I don't know who's gonna come out of college. I don't know who's in college that's chomping at the bit to get into the NFL. That was
wow. I mean, do you know all the rumors, right, that have been going on for weeks with Chicago? It's going to be Harbaugh.
Oh yeah,
the Harbaugh one, not the Day one. I don't know that Day leaves, but I do think this is the perfect fit for him if it is him, but I would hate to see Harbaugh go there. I don't think his offense is going to be suited very well for Justin Fields either. It's going to be Chicago's interesting.
Wasn't Harbaugh in San Francisco when they switched to Kaepernick?
He was with Kaepernick, but
granted, he didn't do much with his college quarterbacks. But
and I also think a lot of that too was who was it that was calling plays though? Because I don't think it was him that was calling plays. Like, he definitely was a key reason why Kaepernick was able to produce. So I'm not super worried about it, but from what we've seen the past couple of years from him in Michigan, let's be honest, he's had running quarterbacks. None of them have really ever produced much, and that worries me because at the college game, you would think you'd be able to scheme and help develop those guys a little bit easier than you can at the NFL.
Look, the good news is he saw Justin Fields destroy his team a couple of times in college, so maybe he knows exactly what he's got there.
One can hope. Next up, we had Mike Zimmer and Chris Spielman out in Minnesota. Dennis, your thoughts on what's next for Minnesota?
I was a little bit surprised that they let go of Spielman as well as Zimmer. Spielman's been there for a while. Now, under Spielman's GM leadership, they're 84-85-2, but they went 66-56-1 with Zimmer. So they went from Leslie Frazier, a defensive-minded coach, to Mike Zimmer, another defensive-minded coach.
They're the ones that deserve Dan Quinn.
And so I feel like they're going to go offensive-minded right now to take advantage of Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook and Irv Smith and KJ Osborne and Amir Smith-Marset. So it feels like they're set up for an offensive coach, but I feel like Spielman did a good job, though. So I really was kind of surprised. I think if I'm a team looking for a GM, the Giants maybe, that might be a route that I would go, is to bring him in, definitely.
I don't know, though. I feel like Minnesota the last few years has consummately maxed the cap with these big splashy veterans that have gotten them nothing in terms of a return on investment. That's probably where they got a little bit tired. I do think this probably means they're definitely committing to Cousins for another year. If I was looking around the quarterback market, knowing I had him locked up and the money that it would be to get out of it, I would probably make the same assessment. But I gathered that there was friction between Cousins and the coach and the front office. So it feels like that's probably a little bit of a move to that point. Minnesota does have some really exceptional offensive pieces. If you were looking at them, like if you were stacking up them and Chicago, I would say Minnesota's a more attractive opening. I think they have a couple of defensive stalwarts too. It doesn't feel like they should be that far from being able to compete and compete for the playoffs. I don't know if I think they're a Super Bowl team, but at least they do have some more attractive pieces in place.
Yeah, they should be an interesting team to watch this offseason. Last but not least, and this is probably more just good news for Deandre Swift, knowing he doesn't have to split the workload like 30-30-30 between 5 other running backs, technically only 2 other if you do 30-30-30. Anthony Lynn out as offensive coordinator in Detroit. Dennis, what are your thoughts?
Well, it was kind of the writing on the wall. I think Lynn approaches things a little bit more from a head coach standpoint after being a head coach for a good while. But when Dan Campbell took the play calling back from him in mid-season, you pretty much knew that was going to be it for Lynn. He was going to be a one and done there in Detroit. I'm still kind of up in the air. I like what Campbell's doing. It'll be interesting to see who he brings in as an offensive coordinator. While he did an okay job and the players play hard for him this year, I just don't know that he's that kind of offensive mind that you want to pin your hopes on calling game after game after game, year after year after year. I think he needs to bring in somebody that is like-minded in philosophy with him and then let them do it. And then, he makes the go for it, don't go for it calls. But then he goes back to sort of being the CEO kind of guy, the Steve Ballmer of the Detroit Lions. Bill Gates was the brain behind all of that and did that. But Steve Ballmer, when he became the CEO there, he was this rah-rah guy who was very energetic and just sort of inspired everybody. And I think that's where Campbell's strength is doing that and getting the players to play hard and then having them execute somebody else's great plan.
Yeah, and I think that can make some sense. Anthony Lynn being like was probably one of the least surprising moves, among these coaching things since Dan Campbell took over play calling toward the end of the season and their offense seemed to get demonstrably better. It was probably clear that Lynn wasn't the best fit.
Yeah, I'm very, very curious to see who they end up bringing in as their offensive coordinator. Obviously, they've still got the NFL draft to go where they could add some pieces, but TJ Hawkinson, at least Jared Goff, likely for one more year, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deandre Swift, and even Jamal Williams, who had a fairly decent season there as well. We've got some very interesting pieces to build around in Detroit, one of the best offensive lines as well. They bring in a good offensive coordinator. I've been saying if they can get Sam Howell with that second pick and another wide receiver at some point, the Lions are going to be a very exciting team to watch.
Man, could you imagine them getting Treylon Burks to go along with?
That's what I've been saying. If they're willing to take him with that first pick, like if you could get Treylon Burks and then Sam Howell with that second pick, oh my goodness, I might actually be a Lions fan. I mean, it'd be a very fun offense to watch.
I mean, I get it. I'm just hoping that they don't say, oh, we got to take Hutchinson. I mean,
yeah,
Hutchinson could be good, but I mean, he's kind of a one-year wonder. I'd much rather have Thibodeau.
All right,
The NFL playoffs are here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is kicking things off with a huge offer. Counting down to Super Bowl 56, new customers can get 56-1 odds. Wow, those are some pretty good odds. On any wildcard team to win their game, just bet $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team is victorious. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you still have something to play for this wildcard weekend. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Football Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN and get 56-1 odds on any NFL team. Bet just $5 and win $280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code TPPN this wildcard weekend at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, so we are going to recap just a couple of the games here that impacted how the NFL playoffs shook out, and no bigger game than the Colts losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars 26-11. Matt, the Colts dominated, but below a playoff spot. What does it mean for Reich and Wentz moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the Colts were just never in it. They got dominated there. And, they were sitting at 9-6, back-to-back Saturday wins over the Patriots and the Cardinals. Seemed to be in a great shape. Kind of fell apart against the Raiders. And then yesterday, it was just confounding. I guess they have not beaten Jacksonville in Jacksonville since 2014, which is probably one of the strangest stat lines. They're going to have to give up that first-round pick because of the play time that Wentz accrued. We went into that game, on Friday. I talked about I thought we needed to see Wentz show that he could be a good starting QB1. We did not see it yesterday. The line wasn't great. They gave up 6 sacks. He had a fumble. He had an interception. They weren't able to move the ball. They weren't able to do anything. And it really has to kind of give you a moment of pause. Going and getting Wentz seemed like it was Reich's big move, and it just hadn't worked for them this year.
Yeah, it was tough. You look at the line, and I mean, Jonathan Taylor carried the ball 15 times. You would think that that's going to be your bread and butter going in against the Jaguars, and it just wasn't. They did not compete. I don't know. It's crazy to me that Carson Wentz is, we've seen him in the past play at a really high level. And we thought this year, teaming back up with Reich, we were going to see more of it. And he just can't seem to put it together. I know there have been injuries along their offensive line. Nelson's missed time. Who's the cat they got at left? Is it Fisher at left tackle? They've had some players just not sort of live up to expectations. They've struggled to see who's going to consistently be the wide receiver 2. Tight ends have been hit and miss. I think tight ends probably because they're blocking. But we've got Jonathan Taylor, the best rusher in the NFL this year, and you only let him carry the ball 15 times against a team that he should have just completely dominated. I don't know. I don't have an answer for it.
It's Frank Reich, man. Probably should have been one of those coaches who was fired today, in my opinion. He's just made a lot of really bad decisions. I don't understand it at all. I got it. There was a lot of talk about, we talked about it on Friday, I believe too, right, Matt? That would this be the game that they tried to put a little bit more of it on Carson Wentz to see if he could do it in the playoffs? And then we thought it was going to backfire, and it backfired. You need Jonathan Taylor is your team. Why they did not rely on him, I have no idea. I mean, if I'm a Colts fan, I'd be livid. I don't understand it. It's not like this is a one-time thing either. This has been going on for 2 years now with Frank Reich. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Dennis, you talked a little bit about wanting to possibly buy low on the poor season that Trevor Lawrence was having. I mean, there was some signs of life for the Jaguars yesterday. Does this make the job more attractive? And did Lawrence reboot all of his stock or just some of it?
Well, I think I don't know that his stock necessarily had fallen that far in Dynasty. They had a lot of extenuating circumstances in Jacksonville. Just when they finally get rid of the head coach that's shooting them in the foot time after time after time, then James Robinson gets injured. It hasn't been the smoothest rookie season. But we've seen guys, we've seen Troy Aikman, we've seen Peyton Manning, we've seen guys have terrible rookie years, and it's been great for them. Now Lawrence seems to have not really affected his confidence, but he's not a super boisterous guy to begin with. But he does seem sure of himself when some of the stuff towards the end of Urban Meyer's run flared up. He didn't have an issue confronting it and saying, "Hey, we need to give our best player the ball more, coach." It's pretty much what he said in the media. So I feel like his confidence is there. Coming out, throwing for over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. It puts him in a good spot going forward. I was going to try to sneak in, those super flex late first round draft pick for him, but I don't think that's going to happen this offseason.
I mean, I'm going to sort of disagree that I think his stock had plummeted. There was a lot of talk that he based on performance had actually been the worst of the rookie quarterbacks. And I think this did go back to giving us
but he was in the worst situation too.
I'd say the Jets was a tad bit worse just because of everything going wrong.
But the Jets coaching was far superior to the coaching in Jacksonville.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree.
So that's probably true.
That part's true. Yeah.
I do think it makes the job look a little more attractive. It looks like the rehabilitation of Trevor Lawrence may not be as hard as it looked. If you would have stopped after 17 weeks, he was a one-man turnover machine for a few weeks down the stretch there. You're talking about a team. This is what makes probably even more embarrassing what happened to the Colts. You're talking about a team that came off of getting beaten by the Jets and Zach Wilson, losing 50-10 to the Patriots in a game that wasn't even that close the week prior. They came out, they looked like a different team. They looked like they had different energy. I think that was a great way for them to end, and for Trent Baalke, who seems like he's staying there as GM. That's a great selling point now when you're trying. I mean, you went through a week where you had some high profile coaching candidates say, "No, we don't even want to interview with you." That was the kind of game you needed to end.
It was Dan Quinn. I don't know.
I know, but if you're looking at, so Dan Quinn's name has been mentioned in association with almost every opening. He's viewed as one of the top. To have a guy come out and say, "I don't even want to bother interviewing with you," is not a great sign. There were questions about the culture there prior to Urban Meyer and definitely after Urban Meyer. I think this is the way they needed to end. Well. Yeah.
I mean, Peyton Manning completed only 56% of his passes his rookie year through 28 interceptions.
Everybody throws that out there, but not everybody's Peyton Manning either. Like, every time a quarterback has a bad rookie season, everybody's always like, well, Peyton Manning did this. Well, there's only one Peyton Manning. So just because he did it doesn't mean everybody else will. The one thing I'll say is I do think it's a positive thing for Trevor Lawrence getting that win, because it was a good win. The Colts were a good team. In my opinion, they should have been a playoff team. I talked a little bit about this with Ray Garvin on his morning show the other day, that I think I was more worried about Trevor Lawrence than anybody else, because Jacksonville has never shown the ability to really build around anybody. Like, they've not shown any kind of positive, like, moving forward, like, since Blake Bortles era. So that worried me. But the fact that Lawrence was able to go out there and shows a little bit of the flashes that we saw in college makes me hope that there is some positive things for them in the future. How the hell the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger drugged the Steelers to a win here is beyond me. But the Steelers,
he's Michael Myers.
16.
That's what you missed. He's Michael Myers.
I didn't watch this game because I really thought the Ravens were going to win. They did not. Dennis, the Steelers just keep hanging around. They make the playoffs. They're going to find a way to make it to the Super Bowl, right?
Nope. They're going to be one and done in the playoffs. I get, Najee Harris, Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson. There's some young talent there. I mean, the guys are playing hard for Ben. They want to send him out the right way. But let's see, who's their matchup?
They get the Chiefs, a team that just fundamentally bent them over a chair 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like as much as I would, like to say, oh well, it could be competitive. I do feel like the Chiefs are gonna put a whooping on them, even if Pittsburgh, let's say Pittsburgh puts up 24 points. I still think they lose by double digits. I just don't think they have the firepower. TJ Watt is really, really good. He's probably going to be the defensive player of the year because he got the sack record, and maybe it's rightfully so, maybe it's not, but he's probably going to get it. I just don't think they have enough firepower to get past the Steelers.
Especially, we're going to have to watch, but Najee Harris hurt his elbow yesterday, and the amount of carries they gave to Benny Snell in a competitive and important game would lead me to believe that injury is something that could be a serious problem when you're talking about a short turnaround going to Kansas City. I think them getting in is a credit to the heart of those defensive guys who, really tried to keep them in there all season, to Deontay Johnson, who was trying to make the most out of it, those rookies that stepped up, but mostly to Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is a guy who's just not going to let his team fail. They may not always be incredible, but he's just not going to let them fail. And he squeezes, you were talking about those good coaches that can just squeeze the most out of what they've got. He squeezed that lemon down to the rind.
Yeah, I mean, again, very rarely do I like to compliment the Steelers, but Mike Tomlin, I've said it before, I'll say it again. When the talk was that they might fire him a couple years ago, I would have been thrilled if the Browns turned around and called him that day and hired him. Obviously, the Steelers didn't do that. Smart decision by them, because I do think he is one of, if not the second best coach in football. I mean, he's not better than Bill, but I think you could argue he's the second best coach in the NFL right now. And then obviously the way that organization has handled all that, they've been incredible. That sucks about Najee, because some may have put them in his playoff lineup. But what does this mean for Baltimore in 2022, man?
Somebody probably should have watched the games to see what was going on. Baltimore, man, they need J.K. Dobbins to come back, because, as much as they were able to squeeze production out of Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman, it's just not the same. I think they need Dobbins. I'm still not convinced they don't need a wide receiver. Hollywood Brown has his moments, but he has some exceptionally unfortunate drops. Sometimes guys can move past that, and maybe he can. I don't know if we saw enough out of Bateman. I love what they've got in
Drops
Andrews.
Don't matter.
Except for, he dropped a lot of balls in the end zone in game, and they lost a ton of close games. I think injuries just became too much. They didn't even have Lamar Jackson down the stretch there. I'll be curious to see if they try to keep Huntley. I thought he was really good at first. He did not have a great game yesterday. Really struggled, but probably gives them a really rock solid backup. If they don't retain him, I think he's got a chance. But Baltimore was probably a team that needed to get healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Huntley did filling in for Lamar, but he's no Lamar. Hollywood is I mean, I'm kind of coming around to him, and I think bringing Bateman in and taking some of the pressure off. I haven't looked to see what the passing volume increase was up until Lamar got hurt, but they were tracking to fairly what felt like a fairly significant increase in pass attempts. But the offense runs through Mark Andrews, and when J.K. Dobbins gets back, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. I think Lamar is at the point now, after being injured, I do think he's going to start to revert to fewer rush attempts, and we've seen him be a pretty accurate and efficient passer. So as long as he kind of keeps that up, and the receivers step up. I mean, Devin Duvernay stepped up pretty big as a third receiver this year. I don't hate where they're going and how they're going there.
Yeah, I mean, I called Hollywood Brown to be my fantasy MVP earlier this season. A guy you could get really late that would end up bouncing back. And for the first half of the season, I looked like I was going to be right on par. Second half, I do think a little bit was the injuries and Lamar, because Lamar was not out there a lot in that second half. And I wonder how much of that affected Hollywood as well. The 49ers come back and beat the Rams in overtime. Matt, the Rams jump out to a lead and then blow it. I mean, it continues that trend of them not playing well here in the back half of the season. What does this mean for them in the playoffs?
Yeah, they should probably be glad that seeding-wise they don't end up getting the 49ers in the first round, because they have now lost 6 straight to the 49ers. Matthew Stafford, I was very excited for him, and he's had some very great moments, but he's also struggled with turnovers down the stretch. He played a very clean first half, and it got away from him in the second half. They weren't able to get the run game going. They now have a tremendously hard road because they dropped all the way to the 4 seed. So they get Arizona, which, they split with, and that's a tough, rubber match there. And if they are able to win that, they have to go right away to Green Bay. So the Rams are going to need to be on their A game if they want to get to that Super Bowl.
I think what really hampered the Rams was they couldn't run the ball. I mean, Sony was 21 for 43. That was, it's tough to average.
Get it done.
It's tough to average 2 yards a carry, because when that happens, then Stafford starts to feel the pressure, and he starts to get that. He starts to play hero ball. I've got to do it. I did feel like some of the throws, he did try to force a couple of them to OBJ with the, not I'm going to throw it to him no matter what, but more of the I think he can catch it if I throw it there approach. It was nice to see Kupp do his thing, but Stafford, if they can't run the ball, the Rams are going to be in trouble.
Matt, the 49ers fight their way into the playoffs. What do you expect in their playoff run?
Yeah, I thought Jimmy G, he started a little slow, but it looks like he adjusted to that thumb. They have some really dangerous offensive weapons when they get going. That could be good. They are going to be a tough out, and I think that first round matchup with the Cowboys might be the most attractive game of this upcoming weekend.
I think we all need to put Juwan Jennings in our playoff contest lineups. That one touchdown, he fought it all the way to the ground. I like what Jennings has done this year, but there's been a couple a few catches where he's clearly battling the ball. I have concerns about Garoppolo's thumb still. He did play pretty well, but there were some throws he just couldn't get the zip on him he needed. He couldn't quite get the strength there. And so he was trying to finesse some of it in there. They've got a lot of weapons in San Francisco, the least of which isn't the running game. They can run the ball, and I think that may help them to stay ahead of the game a little bit and keep the other team off balance.
One and done. I don't think they beat the Cowboys. The Raiders beat the Chargers in overtime, which seems like they were trying to just tie, and then Brandon Staley does Brandon Staley things, likely cost himself a win as well earlier by going for it on fourth down instead of taking the points. They win 35-32. Matt, the Chargers come up short. Your thoughts on their performance?
Yeah, they remain one of the most frustrating teams. It really doesn't seem to matter who their coach is. They have some kind of collapse at the weirdest times. They lost that game to Houston that probably put them on a track. It looked like they were for sure tracking to the playoffs, and that really killed the mojo. They got buried for a time and then come back in the fourth quarter. It looked like they can't be stopped, and then I don't know what they're doing, in overtime. And you're right, that timeout. Brandon Staley did some good things for them. Their defense needs to improve. They couldn't stop the run at all. Just another kind of wondering what if. I still love Justin Herbert. I hope they're able to get it together for him.
Man, Justin Herbert's probably still got his arm on ice after throwing 64 passes last night. I mean, this game, it was like taking acid. Throw back to my past. It was like you take it and then you just wait and you just wait and you just wait. Man, that fourth quarter, the acid kicked in and it was crazy. Shit just went wild. And I don't know. I thought I thought we'd see more Foster Moreau after he busted that big play. It shouldn't have been close the way the Raiders kind of came out. But man, Herbert was just converting those fourth downs and those long third downs. It was a wild game at the end. And I don't think they were trying to tie. I feel like you want to get the right defense in. Now they blew it with Jacobs on that last run play. He gashed him. I buy the talk that Staley's saying, hey, we called the timeout because we wanted to get a better defense in to match up with that offense for that play, to make the field goal as long as possible. But they just didn't execute it. Sometimes the other team just executes better.
Yeah, I don't even know that it was on the defense. I mean, if some of those wide receivers just not drop balls, they probably win. I mean, I don't remember the exact stat. I was trying to look it up, but I'm almost positive he was like 6 for 6 for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, or a touchdown on fourth downs last night was Justin Herbert. I mean, he played with his hair on fire. And I just want to throw this out because I feel like, I know everybody was posting, and I agree with them 100%, that we got robbed of him being in the playoffs for freaking Big Ben of all quarterbacks, which, whatever. But most pass yards in 2 seasons, most passing touchdowns in 2 seasons, most pass yards in a Chargers season, most passing touchdowns in a Chargers season, and 4th player ever in the Super Bowl era to get 5,000 passing yards in a season before turning 25, just behind Patrick Mahomes, Dan Marino, and Matt Stafford. That is one Justin Herbert. It's going to get an MVP soon, and hopefully if they can get that defense fixed.
When you mention Matthew Stafford on that list, that has to be your greatest fear about Justin Herbert. Stafford toiled for so many years, putting up good numbers, having weapons, and they couldn't do enough to get into the playoffs. And I feel like that's potentially the Chargers, where they're really good but not good enough.
So the only reason I think that won't be the case is they're set on offense. A lot of those players are under contract. Clearly, the defense needs help in a major way. They can go a little bit heavy on defense in the draft this year. All the Browns did a couple years ago, where they just went all defense and I think took like 2 wide receivers. Maybe they can get it turned around in a year. I mean, they were almost in this year, right? I mean, they don't lose to the Texans. And again, this is the 2nd year in the league. Like, I'm not going to freak out too much. Now, if we're talking about this in 2 years, yeah, I'm going to start freaking out that maybe he's the next Matt Stafford. But I think he's got a lot of high hopes. The Raiders blow a huge lead, but they pull it out in the end. How dangerous will they be in the playoffs, Dennis? And should Rich Bisaccia get the full-time gig?
Yeah, I think I feel like he's earned it. Here, let me show you something here. Get up. So this is my crow here. Big old crow. I'm going to eat a big old serving of crow because I didn't think the Raiders had it in them, and they did it. They made the playoffs. They've looked questionable at times, but Max Crosby and the defense has stepped up when they need to. Derek Carr has come through. Hell, even Brian Edwards came through last night with 4 catches on 5 targets for 63 yards. I mean, if that's not a blast from my past.
It's because he knew the fantasy season was over.
Yeah, no shit. They've got some decent pieces. I think they need better running back depth behind Jacobs. And maybe that's if Drake hadn't gotten hurt, that might be all the depth they would have needed. But Zay Jones and Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller all played really, really well. Edwards has had a moment here or there. Moreau has come through. They need some help on the offensive line. But for them to be able to pull that game off last night was something. I feel like Bisaccia, the hard part is like when you're the interim coach, you want the job, you want to get the job. And a lot of times I think teams really want to do a search, but then the interim coach comes in and does something like Bisaccia did. He rallied this team and they played for him. And between him and Derek Carr, there's something there. Something, maybe it's the mystique, something that I just don't get. But they played really, really well for him, and they got into the playoffs. I think he gets a shot.
Yeah, I think he should get a shot too. It does seem like Mark Davis is really angling hard to get a big splashy name like a Jim Harbaugh. You would think maybe they would have learned something from following that tactic, I would say, when they went with Gruden, but we will see. I hope he gets a shot. The AFC is wide open. The Raiders are a scrappy team. They've won 4 games in a row when everybody doubted them out. They have potentially an easier path because they moved all the way up to the 5 seed. They're at the Bengals, which the Bengals are a good team. Bengals clocked them earlier this year, 32-13, but I think they could potentially get that. And if they got past that, they'd be the ones probably that would go to Tennessee. So they avoid the Chiefs, which seems to be their bugaboo.
No shot. They're losing to the Bengals this week, and I don't think that Bisaccia gets the job either. I just think Davis is going to do exactly what you said, Matt. He's going to go for that big hire. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it because the fact that he held this team together and they made the playoffs with everything, not just Gruden, but obviously what unfortunately happened around the whole Ruggs situation as well, held this team together, and then they made the playoffs. I think he should at least get like a 2-year contract, see what he can do, but that's not – I don't think that's something Davis is going to do. I really don't. Dennis, we are heading into the playoffs. What is a way that we can improve? What is a tool that can help us improve our dynasty rosters?
Yeah, for me, my go-to tool is the Dynasty GM from Dynasty Nerds. Do you want to dominate your Dynasty league? The Dynasty GM from Dynasty Nerds is the tool you'll need to get the job done. It integrates seamlessly with your MFL, Sleeper, Flea Flicker, and FFPC leagues. Use the League Analyzer to identify your team's strengths and weaknesses. Use the Trade Calculator to put together league-winning deals. The Player Shares Tracker keeps track of your rostership and get exclusive rankings and more. Use code ROUNDTABLE for 15% off the monthly or annual subscription. Bundle the Dynasty GM with the Nerd Herd to save even more. I screw up at that same spot every time.
Someday.
All right. Last but not least, before we get out of here, as we do every year, we do our playoff competition on the what was the word I was going to use there, and now I forgot it. Don't know, so we're going to change what I was going to say. You can win either some fantasy football roundtable gear. We will have shirts for any and all teams. So if you're a Dolphins fan, Browns fan, Broncos fan, whatever, we got it. Or you can get yourself some Campus to Canton gear if you win the challenge. I will have Matt and then the podcast account tweet out the link if you want to put it in. If you're in our Discord, that was already put in there for you guys. We've already had a bunch of people signing up for that. Matt, go ahead and give us the rules, and then we will read off our teams really quick before we get out of here.
Yep. So the playoff challenge, everybody has a 14-man roster. You make one selection per 14 playoff teams. So everybody plays the same number of players every week. Scoring is cumulative to win. There are no negative points. Universal 6-point touchdowns. It's PPR. 1 point for every 10 rush receive yards, 1 point for every 25 passing yards, 1 point for a sack, 2 points for a turnover. Those are your defensive and special teams scoring. Standard kicker points, 3 points for field goals up to 39, 4 for 40 to 49, 5 points for anything 50 or longer, and you get a point for extra points. The roster this year, 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 receivers, 3 tight ends, defense, special team, and kicker. So you want to be strategic when you are picking your roster. As I said, I will tweet out the Google form link. It's got the spots for you to drop your roster in, and then we will do the scoring. So do you want me to give my team first to kick it off?
Yeah, go ahead. Give us your team.
All right. So my team that I went with, my quarterbacks, I did Josh Allen of the Bills, Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and my homeboy for life, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Running back, I took Derrick Henry of the Titans. Please God, Titans, activate Derrick Henry, or I'm going to feel really, really sad. I took Damian Harris of the Patriots, and now I forgot my sheet. I don't remember who my third running back was. I'll go to wide receivers. I took Cooper Kupp of the Rams, Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals, and Devontae Adams of the Packers. My third running back was James Conner of the Cardinals. I'm sorry, James Conner, I forgot you. My tight ends, I took Travis Kelce of the Chiefs, George Kittle of the 49ers, Darren Waller of the Raiders. I went with Pittsburgh defense and special teams, and Josh Elliott, the Eagles kicker, who actually somebody mentioned was kicker 1 in fantasy from week 10 on.
Nice. All right. So my team tried to go with I picked the Packers to make the Super Bowl and win it. So I'm sticking with Aaron Rodgers. And then I tried to get one of who I'm hoping is going to be one of the AFC quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. So my QBs 2 and 3 are Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. My running backs, I went Joe Mixon, Elijah Mitchell, and then this is where I might have screwed myself, Najee Harris. So let's go Najee. Hope he's not too injured. Wide receivers, I went A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, and C.D. Lamb. Tight ends, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, and Rob Gronkowski. I went with the Patriots defense, and then with the kicker with the golden foot, Daniel Carlson.
My team is a hot mess because I just couldn't land on a third running back, and I've been trying to move things around, and it's just a mess. I might as well just concede now. All right. Quarterback 1, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Jones at running back, Joe Mixon at running back, Najee Harris at running back. If I happen to repeat a team, point it out to me because, like I said, I've been moving some stuff around. Wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, C.D. Lamb. Tight ends, Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. Patriots defense, and Robbie Gould at the kicker.
I think you did it.
Yeah,
I hate it. I really wanted Devontae Adams in there, but I got done. I had at one point I was looking at it and I had all AFC running
back was
and
terrible.
All NFC wide receivers. I'm like, oh, I can't do that.
I'm going to be honest. I thought running back was the hardest position to program this year.
Yeah, that's why I just tried to load up on those 3 quarterbacks. I feel like I'm going to get at least 1, possibly 2 in, and that might be what takes me over the top. Because I thought about Adams too, but then I was like, well, if I think the Packers are going to win it, I'd probably rather have Rodgers than Adams. So
I picked my Super Bowl quarterbacks too, Dak and Josh Allen.
All right, so that will do it for us today. We'll be back on Friday to preview all of the playoff matchups, and we will do a little rookie profile talk as well. Each of us will talk about a rookie quarterback this week. Everybody enjoy the national championship game tonight. We will talk to you guys again